I thought the dinner would be the beginning of a celebration. I set the table myself, making sure every plate and glass was perfect. My son sat across from me, his new girlfriend. Well, what I thought was still his girlfriend, sitting right beside him. I smiled and asked lightly, "So when's the big day? When are we planning this wedding?" She leaned back in her chair, folded her arms, and gave me a smirk that sliced deeper than any knife. "We got married yesterday." The fork slipped from my hand and clattered onto the plate. My ears rang. Yesterday? Married? Without me? I looked at my son, waiting for him to laugh, to explain, to say she was joking. But he didn't. His eyes were fixed on the table like a child caught stealing cookies. "Is that true?" My voice was soft, trembling. He nodded once, still refusing to meet my eyes. "It was sudden, Mom. We didn't want to make a fuss." "A fuss?" I repeated. My throat burned. "A wedding isn't a fuss. It's a family. It's a mother watching her son take vows. It's—" She cut me off, her tone sharp, almost amused. "We didn't need a big audience. We wanted it private. You'll understand one day." I froze. Understand? She was proud that I had been left out. Proud that I wasn't even given the chance to stand in the back row. I pressed my hands into my lap to keep them from shaking. I had raised this boy. I had sat beside his hospital bed when he broke his arm. I had worked 2 jobs to get him through college. And now, at the most important moment of his life, I was a stranger. "You made me a guest in my own family," I whispered. My son shifted, guilt flickering across his face. But still, no words came. She was the one who answered. "You weren't a guest," she said coldly. "You just weren't part of it." The silence in the room pressed down on me until I could hardly breathe. My chest felt tight, my face hot. I wanted to scream, to demand how they could betray me like this. But my voice betrayed me first. It cracked when I finally managed to speak. "I don't deserve this," I said. "I gave you everything, and you couldn't even give me one day?" Her lips curled in a smirk. "It was our day, not yours." Her words stung like acid. "And my son stayed silent." I pushed my chair back slowly, forcing myself not to collapse under the weight of humiliation. I gathered the plates with shaking hands, needing to do something, anything, to keep from breaking down in front of them. But before I could stand, she leaned forward, her voice low, almost like a dare. "You'll understand why we did it. Soon enough." Her eyes locked on mine, cold and confident. My son still wouldn't look at me. And that was the moment I knew. This wasn't just about a wedding. This was about something darker, something they were keeping from me. I replayed her words all night. What kind of bride gloats that her husband's mother wasn't wanted? My bedroom felt colder than ever. The house was silent. The kind of silence that doesn't comfort but mocks you. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, imagining the celebration I had been excluded from. Laughter, music, champagne glasses clinking. A bride smiling proudly, not because of joy, but because she had managed to erase me. When morning came, I reached for my phone. I told myself maybe they had posted something online. Maybe it wasn't as cruel as it felt. Maybe I could still see a glimpse of my son's happiness, even if it broke my heart. But when I searched their names, there was nothing. No photos, no wedding video, no proof at all. My son's account was quiet. Hers even quieter. It was as if the wedding never happened. The absence itself was strange. Who hides a wedding unless they have something to hide? I called my son. The phone rang until it cut to voicemail. I called again, then again. By the 3rd time, I stopped. The silence from him hurt worse than words. I pulled the curtains closed and tried to steady myself. But the knock on my door startled me. It was my neighbor, an older woman who had lived next door for years. She leaned close, lowering her voice. "I thought you were at the party," she said. My heart jumped. "What party?" "Your son's place." Cars lined up the street. I heard music late into the night. It sounded festive, My chest tightened. So it was true. They hadn't just signed papers in some office. They had celebrated a wedding night filled with guests, laughter and dancing. And I wasn't even told. I thanked her, though my voice shook, and closed the door quickly before she could see my face. I pressed my back to the wood and slid down to the floor, my hands trembling. I opened my laptop and started scrolling through local accounts, party tags, anything. But again, nothing. Whoever had been there hadn't posted a single thing. It was too clean, too controlled. And that's when suspicion settled deep inside me. This wasn't just thoughtlessness. This was deliberate. My phone buzzed. It was my friend, Karen. I hesitated, then answered. "I heard," she said, her voice thick with disbelief. "I can't believe they didn't invite you." I tried to keep my tone steady, but the words cracked as they left my lips. It wasn't an accident. It was deliberate, and I need to know why. Karen was quiet, then whispered, "Don't let her push you out. Something's off." I hung up and sat in silence for a long time. Something was off. I felt it in my bones. My son wasn't cruel, not by nature. No, this had her fingerprints all over it. The next evening, I couldn't help myself. I drove past their building. The trash bins sat out front, waiting for collection. I hated myself for even thinking it. But desperation makes you do things you never imagined. I stepped out, glancing around, and pulled one of the bags open. At first, just crumpled napkins, disposable plates, half-empty bottles of wine. But then tucked deep inside, I saw it. A glossy receipt. My breath caught as I pulled it free. Luxury catering. Dozens of dishes. Champagne. A cake that cost more than some people's rent. And at the bottom, bold and clear, was the signature. Her name. My son's new wife. My hands shook as I folded it carefully into my purse. This wasn't just a secret wedding. This was a celebration planned and lavish, designed to exclude me. And if she thought I wouldn't find out, she was wrong. I drove to their apartment with flowers in my lap, my hands clenched so tightly around the stems that the paper tore. I told myself I wasn't going to argue. I just wanted to see my son's face, hear him speak without her shadow hanging over every word. But the moment the door opened, my hope shattered. The click of the lock was sharp, final. The door stopped halfway, her figure filling the frame like a wall. And just before she closed it, I heard it, the faint sound of laughter behind her, music playing low. They were celebrating again, without me. "I brought flowers," I said softly, holding them up. Her eyes flicked down, and then she smirked. "How quaint." I shifted, trying to peek past her shoulder. My son was there, standing a few feet back. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't moving. He looked like a statue. Frozen, silent, ashamed. "Can I come in?" I asked, forcing calm into my voice. Her tone turned sharp. "This is our space now. You had your time." The words cut straight through me. Our space. Had my son's home become hers alone? I tried to ignore her and focused on him. "Please, just talk to me. 5 minutes. That's all I want." He opened his mouth, but before any sound came, she pressed her hand against the door. "He doesn't owe you explanations." I felt my throat tighten. "I'm his mother. He'll always owe me his truth." She leaned in closer, her perfume overwhelming, her voice dripping with poison. "You don't belong here anymore." For a moment I faltered. The flowers in my hand shook. Then something in me stiffened, a cold strength rising to cover my hurt. I met her gaze and said firmly, "That's your mistake. Families don't erase mothers." Her smirk faltered just slightly before she straightened her shoulders. I finally noticed it then. Her wrist flashing with a designer bracelet, a handbag sitting just behind her by the coat stand. Luxury, expensive, far beyond what my son's modest salary should allow. The suspicion that had been gnawing at me twisted sharper. Something wasn't right here. "I don't want trouble," I said, my voice quieter now. "But I won't be treated like an outsider." She tilted her head, mock sympathy in her eyes. "Trouble? You walked into it the moment you refused to let go. He's mine now." My son flinched at her words, but still, He said nothing. That silence was almost worse than her venom. I realized if I stayed, I'd break. So I did the only thing left to preserve my dignity. I turned the flowers in my hand and laid them gently against the doorframe. "Keep them," I said, my voice steady. "They were meant for both of you." I stepped back. My heels clicked against the hallway floor as I forced myself to leave, head high even as my heart ached. The door slammed shut behind me, but just as I reached the stairwell, I heard her voice cut through the wood, a hiss, low and mocking. "She'll never find out. Unless she digs." I stopped cold. The words wrapped around me like a snare. Find out? About what? I walked out into the night air, my mind burning. I didn't know what she meant, but I knew one thing. I would dig. If she dared me to dig, then I would dig until her lies collapsed on her. I sat in the library the next morning, the glow of the computer screen washing over my face. My hands hovered above the keyboard, trembling not with fear but with a new resolve. She thought I was weak, humiliated, defeated. She was wrong. I typed her name first and last, the one she flaunted with pride. At first, nothing much came up. Just fragments, a social profile with no photos, an address that no longer existed. It was as though she had erased her own history. But buried deep in a public records site, something caught my eye. A name change. 2 years ago. She had gone by another surname before. Why? I leaned closer, my heart pounding. People don't change names for no reason. It was the first crack in her carefully painted surface. I scribbled the old name onto a notepad and kept searching. And then the screen filled with court filings. Debt lawsuits? More than one. Creditors chasing her for money she never repaid. I printed the documents, the pages sliding hot into my hands. Each one was a piece of her real life, a shadow she thought she could bury. I wanted to stop, but something in me whispered, "Keep going." I searched the old name again, this time cross-referenced with police reports, and there it was. My breath caught. A former fiancé had filed a complaint. Fraud, stolen funds, the words burned on the screen. He had accused her of draining his accounts, leaving him broken and ashamed. My pulse thundered in my ears. My son wasn't her first victim. I printed that too. The sound of the machine spitting out the paper was like a drumbeat of truth, steady and undeniable. Still, I needed more. Paper alone wouldn't save my son from her. I dialed the courthouse, my fingers tightening around the phone. After a long wait, a clerk answered. "County records," the woman said. "Yes," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I'm looking into a case involving her old name. Fraud complaint, about 2 years ago." There was silence. Then the clerk sighed. "There was a case, but it's sealed now. That's all I can tell you. It was enough. The pieces were fitting together." "That's enough," I whispered. "I know what I need." I hung up and gathered my papers, my purse heavy now with evidence. For the first time since that night at the dinner table, I felt my spine straighten. The humiliation was still there, the sting of betrayal. But it was being replaced by something sharper. Power. She wanted me to dig, and I had dug. But the ground wasn't finished giving up her secrets. I returned home, spread the documents across my kitchen table, and stared at them like puzzle pieces. Debt, fraud, a past littered with broken promises. She wasn't just cruel. She was dangerous. But one detail kept gnawing at me. If she had changed her name, what else was she hiding? I went back online, tracing her new name through state databases. Marriage licenses, divorce decrees, property filings. I scrolled through them all until my eyes blurred. And then I froze. There it was, a marriage license, issued 3 years ago. I clicked through the document, my stomach twisting. The name of the groom was unfamiliar. The county showed no record of a divorce, no annulment, no dissolution. The blood drained from my face as the truth sank in. She wasn't even free to marry my son. She was still legally married to another man. Exposing her meant risking my son hating me, but silence meant losing him forever. The kitchen table had become my battlefield. Papers were spread across it, Court filings, marriage licenses, debt records, all neatly stacked like weapons. Screenshots of old addresses, sealed case references. Even fragments of her past lives stared back at me. A quiet storm swirled in that room. The lamp above cast a harsh white glow, as though interrogating the evidence itself. I sat there for hours, my fingers running over each page, rehearsing the words I'd need to say. My chest ached with fear. Fear that my son would look at me with the same coldness she used. Fear that he would choose her over me. But fear had no place tonight. Tonight, truth had to win. Piece by piece, her pattern revealed itself. She had dangled wealth in front of him, whispering of investments, business ventures, promises of a better life. I had overheard her once, laughing as she described how soon he wouldn't need old family ties. She had cut him off from his friends. I saw the messages stop, the calls go unanswered. His world had narrowed until she was at the center, and everyone else, me included, was pushed to the edge. And then, the lies. Her age, her background, her very identity, all fabricated, twisted, stitched together like a costume she wore until it suited her. I gathered the papers into a single folder, clipped tight so there could be no running from the truth. Then I picked up the phone. "Come to dinner tomorrow," I told my son. "Just you, no one else." There was hesitation on the line. Then softly he said, "Okay." The next evening I cooked his favorite meal, not for celebration, but for grounding, something familiar, something that smelled like childhood and safety. The table was set simply, the folder of evidence hidden just beneath my chair. My hands shook as I laid out the plates. When he walked in, I felt my throat tighten. He looked older somehow, harder. Love still pulsed in me at the sight of him. But it was layered now with worry, with the weight of what I was about to do. We sat. We ate. Small talk floated between us, brittle and shallow. I waited until his plate was nearly empty before I finally asked, "Do you trust me?" His fork paused midair. He glanced up, wary. "Of course, Mom, but—" His eyes dropped. "You don't like her." The words were both an accusation and a shield. "No," I said firmly, my voice steady now. "I don't like criminals." I pulled the folder onto the table and slid it toward him. The sound of it scraping across the wood felt deafening. He frowned, slowly opening it. His eyes scanned the first page, then the next, confusion shifting into something darker. "What is this?" His voice cracked. "Her real name, her lawsuits, the man she was engaged to before you, the money she stole, and this?" I tapped the marriage license, my finger hard against the page. "She's still married to someone else." He recoiled as if the paper itself burned. His lips parted, but no sound came. His hands shook as he flipped page after page, disbelief crumbling into dread. "She lied," I whispered, leaning forward. "She's been lying since the day you met her. This isn't love. It's a trap." For a moment, silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. Then he pushed the folder back toward me, his face pale. "She told me—" His voice broke, barely above a whisper. "Mom, she told me you'd try to destroy us." The words pierced me deeper than any knife. I reached across the table, desperate to touch his trembling hand. "I am not here to destroy you. I'm here to save you." But his eyes stayed fixed on the papers, on the woman he thought he knew, unraveling before him. The storm outside rattled the windows, as though the night itself listened for his answer. My son's marriage, if it could even be called that, was nothing but fraud. I sat across from him in his small apartment, the folder of evidence open between us. The air was heavy, the curtains drawn tight, as though the world outside needed to be shut out for what was about to happen. My son's eyes darted from page to page, his jaw clenched, his breath uneven. "This doesn't make sense," he whispered. "None of this makes sense." "It does," I said softly. "You just didn't want to see it." The knock of her heels came before the door even opened. My stomach turned cold. She was here. The lock clicked, and then she swept into the room, her perfume sharp, her smile brittle. Her gaze flicked to the papers on the table, and in that instant she knew. Her mask cracked just enough for me to see the fury behind her eyes. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice rising. My son shifted in his chair, his hands trembling as he pushed the folder toward her. "Tell me," he said. "Is any of this true?" She laughed, but it was a hollow sound. "He chose me, not you," she sneered at me. "That's all this is about. You're jealous, bitter, alone." Her words landed like blows, but I didn't flinch. This wasn't about me. It was about him. "Answer me," my son pressed, his voice cracking. "The lawsuits, the fiancé, the marriage license." Her smile faltered. She tried to steady herself, crossing her arms like armor. "People lie on paper. Anyone can make up documents." "She's desperate, can't you see?" I leaned forward, my voice cutting through her denial. "You didn't marry him. You scammed him!" Her eyes snapped to me, blazing. "You can't prove—" "Stop!" My son's voice sliced the room in two. He stood now, trembling but strong, the folder clutched in his hands. He turned the marriage license toward her, his finger tapping the groom's name. "She already has." The silence that followed was unbearable. She opened her mouth, but no words came. For the first time, her control slipped. She was cornered, and she knew it. "You lied to me," he whispered, his face pale. "Everything. Your name, your past. Even this marriage." She reached for him, desperate. "Baby, please, you don't understand." He recoiled, stepping back as though her touch might burn him. I stayed quiet now. This wasn't my fight anymore. This was his moment to see her for who she truly was. "You used me," he said, his voice breaking. "My money, my love, my trust, all of it." Her mask shattered then. She slammed the folder shut, the papers scattering across the floor. "You think this is over?" She spat, her voice sharp as glass. "You think a stack of papers makes you stronger than me?" She grabbed her purse, fury twisting her face. "This isn't over." The door slammed so hard the walls rattled, and then silence. My son stood frozen, staring at the scattered papers, his chest heaving. Slowly, his knees buckled, and he sank into the chair across from me. His hands covered his face, his body shaking. I reached for him, finally, gently. My hand rested on his shoulder. For the first time, he didn't pull away. The war wasn't over, not by far. But tonight, for the first time, she no longer owned the battlefield. The police officer's pen scratched across the report. Every word tightened the net around her. We sat in the sterile, fluorescent-lit room of the precinct, the air thick with tension and disinfectant. My son hunched beside me, his shoulders slumped, his eyes red and raw from a night of no sleep. The folder of evidence sat open between us again. But this time, it wasn't just our weapon. It was an official record. Her lies were being turned into charges. The officer looked up briefly, his eyes steady, professional. "You're saying she never disclosed her legal marriage status to your son?" "She couldn't," I replied, my voice sharp. "Because she was still married to another man the entire time. She fabricated everything." My son's voice cracked as he added, "She told me we were husband and wife. She made me believe—" He swallowed hard, gripping his hands tightly together. "I thought it was real." The officer kept writing, his pen carving out the truth line by line. I felt a quiet storm inside me. Anger no longer roared. It burned steady, controlled, sharpened into something colder. This wasn't vengeance anymore. It was justice. As the report took shape, more revelations surfaced. The officer had already run her name through databases. "She has priors," he said, flipping through a screen. "Fraud investigations in 2 counties. No convictions. She's slippery. Always one step ahead." My son closed his eyes, pain etched across his face. I squeezed his hand. "Not this time," I whispered, and then the real breakthrough came. Once our report was logged, others followed. Calls began to arrive at the station. Former fiancés, former friends, people she had drained and discarded. Each voice added weight to the case, proof that my son wasn't her only victim. The officer nodded as he added the new names. She's built a pattern. That makes prosecution much easier. One revelation nearly broke my son completely. The so-called wedding. The officer pushed the marriage license back across the desk. This isn't valid, he explained gently. Since she was still legally married, any ceremony with her has no standing in court. My son buried his face in his hands. So it wasn't real. None of it. I wrapped my arm around him, steady and firm. She stole your trust, but she won't steal your life. That became my vow. The hours stretched as paperwork piled up, statements repeated, signatures inked. The officer leaned back finally, closing the file with a snap. This will take time, he said carefully, but we'll get her. I nodded, calm but resolute. Time is fine, as long as she never touches him again. We left the station exhausted but lighter. The weight of secrets had shifted off our shoulders and into the hands of justice. Outside, the evening air smelled of rain, cleansing, new. My son walked silently beside me, his face pale but his posture less broken. Each step forward was fragile, but it was a step away from her. That night, I sat by him as he finally allowed himself to weep. The boy who once laughed so easily now cried for the life he thought he had, the love he thought was real. I didn't tell him to stop. I let him break, because only then could he begin to heal. The phone rang the next morning. My heart raced when I heard the officer's voice on the line. We got her, he said. She tried to flee the state. Not alone either. She was with another man. We arrested her at the bus terminal. I closed my eyes, the words sinking deep. The storm was ending, but not with silence, with handcuffs. I thought I had lost him forever, but betrayal forged us stronger. The house felt different now. Still quiet, still carrying the echoes of lonely nights, but no longer hollow. For the first time in months, my son sat across from me at the kitchen table, not as a stranger wrapped in secrets, but as my child again. We didn't speak much at first. Silence became our bridge, a gentle rhythm that didn't demand answers too quickly. I cooked his favorite dishes, set 2 places at the table, and let him come back to me, one meal at a time. He poked at his food the first night, his shoulders heavy, his eyes rimmed with guilt. Finally, he whispered, I felt trapped, Mom. I knew something was wrong, but I was ashamed. Ashamed I couldn't admit it. Ashamed I chose her over you. The confession cracked something in me, but not in pain. It was relief, the truth finally spilling free. You don't need to be ashamed, I said softly. She was skilled at lying, skilled at making you doubt yourself. That doesn't make you weak. He shook his head, tears pooling. I should have seen it. I should have listened. I reached across the table, covering his hand with mine. And yet, here we are, together. That's what matters. Days turned into weeks. Slowly, he began to shed the weight she had draped over him. Therapy sessions filled his mornings. Evenings brought him back to family dinners, where laughter returned in small, careful bursts. At first, he sat stiffly at gatherings, unsure if others judged him. But each embrace, each cousin's joke, each shared story chipped away at his shame. One evening, he lingered after the plates were cleared. The lamp lit his face in soft gold. He looked at me with a steadiness I hadn't seen in so long. You saved me, Mom, he said quietly. I held his gaze, my voice firm but tender. No, we saved each other. That became our truth. The bond between us, once fractured by lies, grew stronger in the aftermath. He learned to trust me again, and I learned to trust the strength I didn't know I still had. We built a rhythm of honesty, sometimes through words, sometimes through silence, always through love. The wounds she left behind didn't vanish, but they stopped bleeding. Scars remained, yes, but scars are proof of survival. As weeks turned into months, I began to see glimpses of the boy I once knew. The boy who laughed easily, who planned his future without fear. Except now he was no longer a boy. He was a man forged by betrayal, tempered by truth. I knew he would carry this lesson into every choice he made. And so would I, because betrayal had entered our family. But it hadn't won. Truth had. I turned then, not just to him, but to you, the listener, the witness to our story. If betrayal enters your family, I said softly, my voice steady with conviction, remember, truth always wins in the end. If betrayal enters your family, remember, truth always wins in the end. If you were in my place, would you forgive? Or cut ties forever? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more true family betrayals.